All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we are doing a deep dive into a process that can literally make or break your project: monitoring stakeholder engagement. We're going to be using the project management body of knowledge as our guide to really get this right. And let's just kick things off with this quote right from the source, because it perfectly sets the stakes. We're not talking about just being nice to people here. We're talking about the absolute core difference between a project that succeeds and one that crashes and burns. So, we're going to tackle this just like a top tier consultant would, breaking it down into 5 super clear, logical sections. We'll go from gathering your intel all the way to making those critical course corrections. By the end, you'll have a framework you can actually use. First up, let's get right to it. Why should you even care about this? I mean, it's easy to see this as just another piece of project bureaucracy, but it's not. It's a strategic function that's absolutely essential for keeping your project on track. So what are we actually doing here? Well, think of yourself as a gardener. You don't just plant the seeds and walk away, right? You're constantly checking the soil, the water, the sunlight, and you're making adjustments. That's what this is. You're monitoring the health of your stakeholder relationships and constantly tailoring your plans to keep them strong. And here's the real payoff. Projects are living, breathing things. They are not static. The environment changes, people's priorities shift. You know how it is. This process is what keeps your engagement strategy from becoming stale. It's the engine that ensures your approach evolves right along with the project, keeping it effective from day one to the finish line. Okay, so to monitor anything, you first have to have the right information. The PMBOK calls these inputs. I like to think of this as building your information arsenal. This is the raw intel, the foundation for every single decision you're about to make. The PMBOK helpfully groups all of this intel into 5 big buckets. You've got your main plan, which is your roadmap. You have your day-to-day documents, the logbook of the journey. You've got the raw performance data, the hard numbers. And then you have the external factors, like company culture, and the internal stuff like templates and lessons from past projects. Put it all together and you've got a full 360-degree view. Now let's double-click on that project management plan for a second. Within that big document, these 3 subplans are your go-to sources. Why? Because they spell out exactly how you planned to manage people, information, and relationships. This is your baseline. It's the strategy you're going to measure your actual performance against. And if the plan is the blueprint, then these documents are the daily field reports. This is where you see what's actually happening on the ground. The issue log is telling you about the problems. The risk register is flagging potential threats to your engagement. And that stakeholder register, that's your single source of truth for who's who. Look, it really all boils down to this. Without these inputs, you are flying completely blind. But with them, you have a rich, detailed, real-time dashboard telling you exactly what's going on with your project. So having a great dashboard is one thing, but it's not enough. Now we need to talk about what you actually do with all that information. This is where we fire up the analytical engine. We're going to use some specific tools and techniques to turn all that raw data into actual usable insight. And the PMBOK gives us a fantastic toolkit here. It's a really smart mix, right? You've got the hard analytical skills, some decision-making frameworks, data visualization. But look, it also includes the so-called soft skills. Because let's be honest, all the analysis in the world means nothing if you can't talk to people and communicate your findings effectively. Let's peel back the onion on data analysis, because it's not just one thing. It's a process. First, you might use alternatives analysis to figure out your options if a stakeholder's engagement is off. Then you dig deeper with root cause analysis to figure out why. And finally, you might even do a full stakeholder analysis to see if their power or interest in the project has fundamentally changed. And this is a perfect real-world example. A key stakeholder suddenly pushing back? That's a symptom. A good PM doesn't just react to the symptom. They use root cause analysis to diagnose the disease. Is it a simple misunderstanding? Did a new risk pop up that's affecting them? Did their boss change their priorities? This is how you solve the real problem. But if you made me pick just one tool from this whole process, the single, most powerful, most practical tool in the entire toolkit, it would have to be the one that lets you see the state of your stakeholder community in one simple picture. And this is it, the Stakeholder Engagement Assessment Matrix. Honestly, for my money, this thing is pure gold. It's so simple, it's brilliant. You just map where each person is right now, that's the C for current engagement, and then you map where you need them to be for the project to win, that's the D for desired. And that gap, that little gap between the C and the D, that, my friends, is your entire engagement strategy, visualized on a single page. And that whole matrix is built on these 5 clear levels. It gives you a consistent language to talk about engagement. It covers the whole spectrum, from somebody who literally doesn't even know your project exists, all the way up to someone who is actively championing it and ensuring its success. So the huge takeaway here is that these tools are what let you go from just having a big pile of data to having a clear clinical diagnosis. That assessment matrix in particular basically puts a big glowing arrow on the exact engagement gaps you need to focus on closing. Okay, so you've gathered your inputs, you've run them through your analytical engine. What comes out the other side? The outputs. And these aren't just reports that you file away to collect dust. No, these are the tangible products that drive actual strategic action on your project. Your analysis is going to produce one or more of these 4 things. You'll create new information, you might need to file a formal change request, and you will almost definitely need to update your plans and documents to match what's happening in reality. Now, that first output, work performance times information, is a super important idea. Notice it's not data anymore. Raw data is just numbers and facts. Information is data that you've analyzed and put into context. It tells a story, often the story of whether you're successfully closing those C to D gaps on your matrix. And this is exactly what that output can look like in the real world. Your work performance information could be a simple chart like this, showing a clear win. You've used your strategies to successfully move a stakeholder from being resistant to neutral. That's a measurable success you can now share. Now, based on what you've learned, you'll probably need to file some formal change requests to update your core documents. Maybe your stakeholder engagement plan needs a totally new strategy for one group. Maybe the risk register needs a new entry about a disengaged stakeholder. This is how you ensure your project's official documentation stays accurate and useful. And this is the magic. This is where theory hits the road. The outputs aren't the end of the line. They're the corrective actions that turn your analysis into better strategies, better plans, and ultimately stronger relationships that help your projects succeed. All right, that brings us to our final and maybe the most crucial section. Let's pull the camera back and tie this all together. Because monitoring stakeholder engagement isn't a one-and-done task. It is a living, breathing, continuous feedback loop that powers your project from start to finish. This chart says it all. This process is what transforms you from being a passive scorekeeper who just reports on what already happened to being an active, strategic driver of engagement. You stop just reacting to problems and you start anticipating them. You're not just following a static plan. You're running a dynamic, iterative feedback loop. So I'll leave you with this question to think about for your own projects. This entire process, the inputs, the tools, the outputs, it gives you the framework to make sure the answer is the right one. It ensures your stakeholder strategy isn't just some document that's collecting dust on a shelf, but is a living, powerful guide that is actively driving your project towards success.